Well, here we are in Philadelphia, and I'm here with my good friend and combat veteran, Bruce Deisinger. And what we're here for today is to get oral history from Bruce and his service while he was serving with us in the 2nd Platoon Wolfhounds. So, Bruce, I want to thank you very much, first of all, for driving and being with us today. And I'm just going to start out kind of with some basic questions, like where were you born and raised?
Philadelphia.
Oh, so this is home for you.
Philadelphia. I was born in Philadelphia, but my father saw the light across the river, so we moved to New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
That's where I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about your folks and what your childhood was like.
Okay. Dad worked for the Bell Telephone Company. Mm-hmm. He was in teletype, which is not around anymore.
Oh yeah, you bet.
He worked in Center City. My mother was housewife, which was very common in those days. And I grew up in a little Quaker town in New Jersey called Moorestown. And Dad worked there, and his twin brother worked there for the phone company. They both retired at the same time. Both parents are deceased.
Okay.
They'd be way over 100 by now.
Any brothers or sisters?
I have a sister who is 82.
Okay.
And she's been fighting rheumatoid arthritis most of her life.
Oh my gosh.
She has more tenacity than she could have been a wolfhound.
Yes, indeed. Did you volunteer or were you drafted?
I was drafted.
Okay, so what were you doing at the time? You'd graduated from high school, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And then how long between that period and you got your letter?
I graduated in '64.
Okay.
And Vietnam was no big thing then.
Yes.
And I went to college. So when I started college, I was not a draft dodger. When I got out of college,
well, you got a deferment.
Correct.
If you needed one in those days, I think, right?
Yeah. And one day before graduation, I was in Newark, New Jersey, with a physical for the draft.
Oh, so that was yeah, okay.
And the fellows I went to college with that were from the same draft board were also there.
Oh my!
And I had a teaching contract, and I started working for the Philadelphia Transportation Company, part-time doing traffic checks, scheduling, okay. And that's when I got drafted. I did some experimentation with going with the Air Force, and
so you were looking at different options at that point?
Yeah, going into the music program.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. In high school, were you in the band? And
yeah.
What instrument were you playing?
Well, I was playing baritone horn, euphonium, and cello.
Okay.
Because they had too many brass players. So
okay, yeah.
So I played at orchestra, and I went to college as a music major.
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you get a degree in teaching and music?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, good. So you get drafted, and were you surprised? I mean, when you saw the letter and it was all of a sudden it's reality, did you go, oh my gosh?
Yeah, it's greetings.
Yep.
I still have it.
Yep. Oh, good. Yeah. I've got a lot of that stuff. I did not save, somehow or another, I did not save that.
I don't know why I saved it,
yeah.
But yeah. So there was 3 of us from our high school that were at the reception station together.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that. Where did you go to basic training?
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay. And at that point, it was just basic. So you didn't have a clue or what you might end up. You could have been a truck driver or whatever. It was in basic. Was there a rumor or did anybody talk about, a lot of guys are going infantry?
So it was a complete mystery. I knew if you were going to Fort Polk, you were.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah.
I knew. I got that message. There was a drill sergeant who was in the 25th. He had been wounded. I don't know if he was a wolfhound or not, but he was part of the 25th. He had the tropical lightning.
Sure. And Fort Dix is a big hospital, isn't it? Don't they have a big hospital there?
Yeah.
Because a lot of our guys, when they got wounded, wound up in Fort Dix.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
that's where I wound up too.
okay.
And Doc Turner, I didn't know it at the time, was there
Yes,
at
yep,
Fort Dix.
that's
Yeah.
where he finished up his time. And tell me a little bit about basic. Did you get bused to your first duty station, or did you fly in? How did you get
We
there?
were bused from Newark, New Jersey
Okay.
to Fort Dix.
Do you remember going through the gate and they took you somewhere to unload you?
Yeah,
Where did they unload you?
at a reception station or something there, and then they took us to our unit, our company.
When you got off the bus, was there anyone there to greet you? Were there any
I-
drill instructors?
I don't remember. All I know is that one of my schoolmates was made the squad leader.
Okay.
He had the armband.
Oh, yes, yes, sure.
And I still laugh at him. Every time I see him today, I still laugh at him.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, so pretty much everybody I talked to, it doesn't matter whether you were at Fort Ord like I was or where you were, they had barracks, and then they had bunks,
Yeah.
bunks and so forth. And tell me what you remember about basic. What were they teaching you? And
I was in a very unusual basic training company. We were what they called Old Fifth, which was the old barracks at Fort Dix.
okay,
And the runway from McGuire Air Base was near our barracks. So the jets, the afterburners,
oh sure,
just would shake everything. And we had a very unusual experience at our basic training company. We did not call our drill sergeants drill sergeant. They were called sergeant. They were not drill sergeant. The captain came out and said that he never had any AWOLs. He was very proud of it.
that sounds like an underlying statement.
Yeah.
I mean, he was giving you
Yeah.
a clue.
And I had my first drill sergeant used to shake when he talked to him. The rumor was he had malaria. He was
Oh, my
older.
God. Oh yeah.
Plus he drank a lot. So in the morning he would shake, and I'll never forget him. His name was Sergeant Burton.
Okay.
And he used the usual names for trainees. And we went through our shots, and we were going to a class, and I said to him, I don't feel well. He says, well, you're sitting down, go in there. So when I came out, I go, I don't feel well at all. And he put his hand on my forehead, and he grabbed me and took me to the infirmary.
Wow.
I had
Did you react to the shots or what?
I had the plague.
My oh my.
And I didn't know this at the time. I just went into the hospital.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 days later, I came back to the unit. My
Sure.
stuff was all there, and
Sure.
they covered. They must have had me on the morning report
Probably. Yeah.
because they don't. Another rumor was they didn't recycle. They worked it out. And our second drill sergeant his name was Sergeant Davis, Melvin Davis, and he called everyone Slim. He never cursed at you. And I always had trouble with the overhead bars.
Mm-hmm.
After chow, he would personally help me. Anyone who's having a problem in any of the PT stuff,
Wow, that's impressive.
he was very. And most of the drill sergeants there were tough, but they weren't demeaning you
Yeah.
all the time.
And they were honestly training you. In
Yeah.
other words, they were hoping by the end of the cycle you would have a lot more knowledge on how to operate in the Army than you did before you came.
The first week, and we had a post pass. The second weekend, I had a pass to go home.
So, as we were talking about basic training, Bruce, what was it like towards the end of basic training? After you'd gone through all the training and basic and so forth, did you start feeling confident? As opposed to when you first went in, you were.
Yeah.
And so, what did graduation comes? And that's the day that they get everybody together and they read off people's names, right? Tell me what that was like that day.
Most of us went to Fort Pope. And I don't remember too much about it. They must have taken us someplace to get on a plane. Because I think we landed in Texas. There's an Air Force base in Texas.
Mhm. Did you, now, because earlier we talked about, you had no clue, nobody had a clue. When they said 11B,
I knew.
did something within you just like,
I just knew.
I'm had?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay, so you arrive at Fort Polk. I'm assuming it was a little bit different circumstance in AIT than the first day of basic, right?
Correct, yeah.
They treated you differently and so forth, so.
The thing I remember, I don't think it was the day we got there. There was a group of us from Fort Dix, and there were troops from other areas. The first sergeant got out and marched all of us from Fort Dix to the barber shop
Oh, yes.
because our hair, he was swearing at us, and because you guys from Fort Dix, you're hippies, and
Yeah.
it wasn't long. It was just
It had grown through the 8 weeks of
what
basic.
our basic training company was a little more liberal.
Yeah,
and,
okay.
And I can remember going through this, and the next morning, formation, he apologized. Evidently, the CO had jumped all over him
Well, I'll be darned.
because we were considered troops.
Yeah.
Well,
At least everybody started out with the same haircut. So.
exactly.
And so, do you remember who your drill instructor was there?
I have no idea. We had a shake and bake
Okay.
guy.
Oh,
His
yeah.
last name was Clark.
Okay.
And we used to call him Boy because he looked like about 12 years old.
I'll be
And of course, I was 22.
sure. Yeah, you were an
Or
old
20.
man.
Yeah, I was 22.
Yeah.
What was your nickname
Where?
in Vietnam?
I had none.
You didn't have everybody had a nickname.
Nope.
No, not everybody.
Okay.
And we'll get to why I didn't.
Okay.
Oh.
And so tell us about what they taught you in basic, or in AIT, excuse me.
Was the usual, Then we went up to, was it Peason Ridge? I think it was called Tigerland.
Yes.
And we had the shelter halves. And,
So you were bivouacking up there?
and we dug the moat. And good thing we did because it rained at night.
Oh yeah.
Then we went through the where you have to go through when supposedly get captured.
And isn't Tigerland a simulated
Yeah.
Vietnam village or something like that?
And the fellow, there were two of us who went together, and his last name was Picknell, and he was about 5 foot tall, and we didn't see a thing. I don't know where we went. We were the last ones they were looking for us.
Oh my.
We went around everything. Then we never got captured.
Okay. Which was the idea, right?
Yeah, I think they were a little upset because,
They wanted everybody to get a taste of
yeah,
what it's like to be captured.
but, I thought it was prudent not to get captured.
Sure. So at the end of AIT after graduation, did you get some time off before going to Vietnam?
Well, I was sent someplace else. I had a leave, and there were a couple of us who were sent to Fort Knox, Kentucky for APC training, Armored Personnel Carrier. And one of the fellows that was in AIT and basic with me lived in the next town over. So we flew back to Fort Knox after our leave. We get there, my luggage is lost.
Oh,
And fortunately, I carried one of those big black bags that we had, and
Sure.
I had extra clothing,
Sure.
but I didn't have fatigues. We're there a week early. The orders were wrong, which was fortunate. So the first sergeant there, he just had it. He went into the airport and confronted, it was Allegheny Airlines at the
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and came back with my duffel bag.
I'll be darned.
He was furious.
Yeah.
And not at me, at the,
Did you get trained on APC then?
Yeah.
What was that like?
well, it was winter, and Kentucky's cold. in
Oh
the winter.
yes.
And the tracks had no heaters. We were told all the tracks with heaters were in Vietnam, which was probably true.
That par for the course.
And I wound up as a squad leader there. I did guard duty, came back and the thing was on my bunk. And I asked the sergeant, I said, hey, what's going on? And he says, you're the new squad leader. I said, oh, really? He says, well, I looked at your record. He says, you're a college graduate.
Exactly. I knew you were going to go there.
So he says, this is the Army, you have no choice. So I kind of enjoyed it because I had no KP.
Sure. Yep.
And I took the guys out for guard duty, but I
Didn't have to stand guard duty.
My first guard duty was at the WAC barracks. And it was cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no place to.
I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, my last 6 months, my obligation, and it was the coldest, snowiest, freezingest. It was unbelievable. And the trainees, I was drill instructing, and the trainees went like at the rifle ranges, had to get down in the holes, and we could only do a couple at a time. Everybody else had to go in the tents where the oil heaters were at. It was just so severe. It was just unbelievable.
It was funny. They had a little bit of snow when I was there, and being from the Northeast, it was no big thing. But
Yeah.
they closed everything up. I mean, we had training,
Yeah,
but
and the wind. Oh, I remember the wind chill was just unbelievable. So you're sitting now, you're driving a PC around, and life is not so bad, and you think you're going to Vietnam as a PC driver.
yeah.
How did that not happen?
Well, evidently you guys had a little problem with Diamond One.
Okay.
So I arrived there during Diamond One.
Oh, so you, in other words, you went over as a PC MOS, a driver?
It's 11 something.
So, okay, it's a subset. Okay,
Correct,
yeah.
So I was still 11 Bravo, but I had this 11B something. I don't recall
Yeah.
what it
So
was.
you're thinking, show me where the motor pool is, right?
And go on. I'll tell you the story about the AWOL. It's
Okay.
coming up.
Okay, so you flew into Benoit.
Correct.
They took you over to Long Bend.
Yep.
And you were probably there a couple of days anyway, until
2 days.
until your name was called. And tell me about that. Your name was called and your orders. And
I'm going to the 25th.
okay,
That's as far as I know.
okay,
And I guess Danny Dietz and I rode up on the convoy together.
okay. And then, so are you still thinking you're APC driver?
Yeah.
So I mean, nobody's told you different, right? Okay, so they take you out to Cu Chi.
Yeah. In Cu Chi, I was thinking to myself, there was a college buddy of mine who was a year ahead of me that was in a band in Vietnam.
Oh,
So I called the band and I said, do you have so-and-so tuba player? Oh, yeah. So I went over to see him.
is this in Cu Chi?
Yes.
I didn't even know they had a band.
Yep.
When would they play?
I have no idea.
Honestly, I did not know.
Maybe they played during the mortar attacks. I don't know.
I honestly did not know.
Evidently, some of the guys who were there earlier, and Cu Chi said sometimes they played when they got there, like a reception
that.
type
For
of thing.
heaven's sake.
So the warrant officers said to me, "Oh, you're a college." So he gave me a horn and he had me play, and he says, "I'm friends with the commanding general. Over time, I will get you orders to go into the band." So I'm smiling.
I was going to say that's good news.
Yeah, I'm smiling until where they sent me.
Did you at the time when you realized now you're in Charlie Company, 2nd platoon, and you're going out to the field, was there any time where you wanted to say, "Wait a minute, this is a mistake. I'm supposed to be going to the band"?
No.
Well, no.
I know. I knew it was fruitless to say.
Oh, okay.
I knew it was an exercise. But when they sent me to the Wolfhounds, I had heard about them.
Uh-huh.
When I got there, somebody said to me, "Oh, you have a what they call it, license." See, I had a track license, which is I forget what the classification. It's like
Yeah, sure.
it's like a tactical license.
Yeah.
So tomorrow morning you're going up to Tainan, and you're going to drive in the convoy. I didn't even know I had no clue how to drive 2.5. I'm thinking to myself, this is not good. So a fellow was there. He was coming either from R&R or off of medical or something. I don't know if he was a wolfhound, but he said to me, "You don't want to go in a convoy because you could get hurt." So that night they had the incident with the blowing up the Chinooks, and they were running around. And I'm huddled in a bunker with not even a pocket knife,
Oh, I know. Yeah.
and you could hear them. And I'm going, "Oh my goodness!" I said, "Well, I don't have to worry about going to Charlie Company."
Yeah. So, was there anybody that you remember with you? I mean,
Danny Dietz.
Oh, so you guys were kind of staying.
Yeah, I don't remember Danny, but Danny and I were together.
Yeah.
Probably Crabtree, Burrow. We were all
Okay.
newbies.
All that same group.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of welcome to Vietnam night.
Yeah. Well, we had been rocketed at Long Binh.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
That
that happened a lot there.
So I was quite aware that we were in Vietnam.
Sure.
And we didn't have. I think I went 1 or 2 days to the bleachers for training, and they showed us, the dog, and a Vietnamese officer spoke to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's as far as I remember. But the next morning, when I got up, this fellow, old timer, and I went AWOL for a couple hours.
Where did you go?
I don't remember, but we went away.
Okay.
And then we came back to the orderly room and got screamed and yelled at, of course.
Sure.
And I'm going,
I don't know.
kind of Ed Norton type of thing.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, so I was just with him. I didn't. So he got the brunt of the.
Okay.
So we went to the airfield, and that's when I saw all the Chinooks. We took a plane up to Tay Ninh, and I don't remember anyone particularly meeting me at Tay Ninh. All they said to me, "We're glad you're here," and they gave me a blanket, the M16 and some other things, and threw me on a Jeep. It took me out to a fire support base. It had mortars. It was right outside the wire, I guess.
Do you remember what fire support base?
You were there.
Does Harris sound familiar to you?
Could have been. It was a.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to refresh your memory.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So Harris was there, and then.
And that night we got mortared. That's when the guy got killed that was there the last night. Came out to collect money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you remember that. And
Yeah.
I remember someone kicking me because I slept through the mortar attack, and they wanted to make sure I was alive.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
And I remember some of the guys. I think maybe Danny Dietz or George Cush were on LP that night.
Okay. And so, do you remember who the platoon leader was at that time? How about the platoon sergeant? Was Marquez?
Yeah, I know now.
Okay. Okay.
And I was with Burrow, Crabtree, and Alorondo. So there were 4 of us together. And the only thing I remember about you is that you never really told me who you were. And to me, you look like about a 12-year-old. I'm almost 23 years old.
Sure.
And I'm looking at your old pictures, and I'm going, baby face.
Sure. Oh, yeah, no kidding.
And I'm going, and the only time you yelled at me was about not having a shirt on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I mumbled a few things under my breath. But I really didn't know who you were, or I didn't know you were my squad leader.
Sure.
But I did what you told me to do.
Yep.
And then I had the honor of you putting me on flank. And you remember that.
How did that feel?
Well, like I told you at my home, 1 is the loneliest number.
Oh, yeah.
And I wasn't there much. Then I got the gift of the ammo, the 400 rounds.
Yep.
And I was with Lemire.
Yeah. And by the way, that 400 pounds was a pretty good amount of weight to add to everything else you were carrying.
Yeah.
So okay. Do you remember the first ambush patrol we went on?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
The first one was kind of uneventful. Somehow, I got confused, I only had to pull guard duty once. I must have woken up the wrong person. I probably did reverse psychology. You guys did to us newbies. So I only was up once for guard duty, and
Okay.
we had to report in the radio.
Oh, yes.
And you got to realize this is probably my second or third day with
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah.
platoon, and I had a night scope, and I'm going, if something moves, I got to make sure it's someone instead of something.
Sure, sure. And be sure to wake up
Yeah.
old Sarge over there so he can tell you what to do at that
Yeah,
point.
and it was so dark, I didn't even know where I was.
Oh, I know. It got so dark up there. We were at that point. I think we were outside of Tane End,
Yeah,
and it was just on some of those starless, moonless nights. You couldn't see your hand in
so
front of your
it
face.
was, and one of the guys that that been there a while told me, he says, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just most of the time we don't see much of anything. Don't." Somebody reassured me. That was,
Yeah.
but that wasn't the first time we were fired on. We were on a daytime patrol.
Mhm.
We must have hit a machine gun nest.
And so you remember that day, and
Very.
how did that play out? I mean, do you remember?
It was hit, or
Did
it
it
was
go
just,
by fast, or did it
Yeah, it
seem
was
like
just
it
like
was
a-
forever?
No, it was
or-
just a few seconds. It was just like a rat-a-tat-tat. And
Yeah.
They
Okay.
they left.
And then, so what was your thinking? What did you think about ambush patrols? Did you think not so bad? Or
Yeah, I said, the second one was the amusing one. You probably remember when the flare went off
yeah,
and we had to move,
yeah.
and we were parked right on the trail,
Mm-hmm.
and the two, I think you said they were probably NVA, tripped over
Yeah.
Marquez. Now, I knew who Marquez was. I had kind of met him
Mm-hmm.
before that, and he was doing hand-to-hand
Well,
with him.
the guy was point man, and he walked right in. I mean, he didn't walk in on him. He stopped right in front of him, and it was so dark. He was probably looking out here, and I think Marquez, and no, he wasn't making any noise.
Oh, yeah.
I think Marquez told me later he looked up and he just saw just a glimmer of the AK side, and he reached up, and sure enough, he grabbed an AK, and
There were two of them.
the rest was history, right?
Lemire got the first.
Yeah,
Got one.
yeah. So it was
That's what woke me up was the machine gun.
that was very unusual.
Yeah.
To,
And like Crabtree said, that was the first time I saw a dead body.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
How about the first time you saw one of our guys get hurt? Maybe a booby trap or something. Do you remember that?
The only time I saw the guys that were hurt was when I was hurt.
Okay.
So, and it didn't bother me because I was hurt.
Yeah.
So
Did while you were with the platoon, did anybody get killed?
other than what's his name, Bill, you mentioned him. He wasn't killed that day. He died in the hospital. I can't think of his name now. You mentioned his name. The old guy.
Gosh, I'm drawing a blank too. Well, it doesn't matter. But
Yeah.
so anyway, you had now you, in other words, it was Realville.
Yeah.
I mean, this is no longer, I'm just
Yeah.
taking we're diddy bopping out there and having a good time.
And Doc never got to me.
Well, let's go back and describe that. What were you doing the day that this happened? Were you guys in the fire support base, or just go from there?
Okay, we went back for a stand down. I got a shower and clean fatigues. And Flores had told me that I probably wouldn't go out because my feet, even today, they just blistered. And they were horrible. And when I went out on patrol, I was like in pain. But I went because
It wasn't foot rot, was it? Was it almost, or was it something different than that?
I don't know. It was callous and
Okay.
they were white.
Yeah. Okay.
And I had that problem in AIT.
Okay.
Basic I didn't because it was sand. It was, softer.
Sure.
So I was told I had to go out, and I had C4. I wasn't carrying the ammo.
Mm-hmm.
And we did something. We were choppered out.
Mm-hmm.
We did something. I was told we were going to blow up old bunkers.
Well, that's why you were carrying the C4.
Correct.
And I think Crabtree had a bag with the detonators and
Yeah, he had something too.
that kind of stuff.
So after a while, I don't know if it was you or somebody came up and said, we'll saddle up, and we're going across that field. And I said, that's not a good idea, or something like that. And I was told, you do what you're told.
Sure.
I had no intention of not going. I was just
Yeah.
like, I'm thinking to myself, there's a tree line all around this thing. And I think I said to Crabtree, someone's going to get hurt. And we went across, and of course, you know what happened. As soon as the platoon got,
Yep.
I was the first one to get hit.
And that was the opening RPG.
There were two. The first one, I didn't know. I felt the blood,
Mm-hmm.
or saw the blood on my. The second one must have hit real close. It lifted me off the ground.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I'm bleeding everywhere. So I called for medic.
No, you didn't. You screamed.
Yes. You're right. I used my authority to
Sure,
voice,
sure.
and nothing happened, so I called again. I think I called 3 times, and that was kind of dumb because they had me pinned down.
They could hear exactly where you were at.
And all I could hear was bing over my head.
Did you know if anybody else was hurt at that point?
No, because I was the only one who was hurt on that side. I did hear in the background some calls.
Okay.
So there were others. So what I did was I moved. Not far, but just a different place. And that's when the bullets stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So after it was all over, I don't know how long we were out there. I'm bleeding like.
Yeah.
Crabtree comes up to me, and I look up, and his forehead's all covered with blood. He's the one, I'm the one he had the discussion with about the blood, and he was arguing with me, and he took his helmet off.
Yeah, and creased his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, pulling his head off, the helmet off, it made it bleed even more.
Oh yeah, sure, sure.
So that's the story, and I don't know if Crabtree or somebody else took my rifle, because I was pretty weak by then.
Oh, yes.
And Jamie screaming and yelling at me because I didn't know where my rifle was. I didn't even know where I was.
Oh, of course.
And they helped me over towards where the helicopter was. And I can remember seeing the guys there on the ground. And that's when I got really shocked.
Oh yeah.
And I remember telling them, oh, don't put me on the helicopter. Let them go. They're worse off. And next thing, I must have passed out.
Yeah.
And we're all in that helicopter. The runners are hitting the tree line, and I'm thinking to myself, we're not going to make it. So they took us to Tana Inn.
Okay.
There was no room for us. Then they took us to Ku Chi.
Mm-hmm. And the crew chief, of course, started to do the best he could as far as getting your bleeding stopped, right?
Well, Doc didn't really have time. It had kind of congealed. I mean, I wasn't really bleeding that much.
Yeah. What do you remember when they took you off the helicopter at Ku Chi?
I went into I guess the hut there, or
The evac, okay.
and they started cutting my boots off. And I go, don't cut my boots, they're almost new. And scissors. Oh, we have to do that. And of course they cut my fatigues off.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had wounds all over the place. And then I woke up, I guess they took me in the operating room. And there was a VC there in the recovery room. And they're screaming and yelling at him. He was eating the eggshell. They gave him an egg.
Unbelievable.
And they were calling, yelling at him. And the only thing I remember was the orange juice they gave me. It was the best orange juice I've ever had. My mouth was dry.
Oh, of course.
Completely dry.
Sure.
And then they took me to the recovery, the ward,
Hmm.
and Granger was across.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, Granger was the only one of the group that was.
Did you guys talk
Oh, yeah.
and say, "Holy cow,
Yeah.
this was like not a good deal"? Or
Yeah.
I mean, what do you remember about that?
Just the normal. I remember telling Granger jokes. He got mad because it hurt when he laughed.
Yeah.
And the more he said it hurt, the more I told him.
Yeah. Did they tell you at that point, you're done, you're not going back out? So what was in your mind? Did you think, hey,
I wasn't thinking anything.
okay,
I was more worried. The first night there, they put a mattress over us.
oh yeah, because of incoming?
A lot of good that would have done. And I had to go to the latrine, and they said they didn't have anybody there to take me outside. So I said, I'll go myself. And they, hooked up the IV to the
Yep.
thing, and I walked out.
And you wheeled,
Yeah.
and you walked out.
And I walked back. The problem I had was getting up. And
Mhm.
once I was laying down, I had to have somebody help me get up. And I could remember the doctor coming in the next day and say he was going to have to. My lungs were full of fluid.
Draining tube.
And that night, all I did was spit fluid. The next morning, he says, "Oh, I don't have to do that." So I left the hospital first. They told me I was going.
I was gonna ask if you and Granger went together.
No.
Okay.
Because Granger, I guess, was hurt worse.
Okay.
They told me I was going to Japan. I go. Then I started smiling.
Sure. What was that like?
Well, we went to Tunsanut, had bed sheets. Now I didn't hear anything.
Were you on a gurney, or were they were walking?
I remember how they took us
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Probably flew us.
But I mean, when you got on a plane, it was a hospital plane, right? Where they had
Yeah, you were on
you were laying on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
At Tunsanut, I couldn't hear. I probably had a concussion.
Yeah.
So they brought a TV up close to me, bed sheets, air conditioning.
Hmm.
I was in my glory.
Oh my gosh.
So then they flew us to Japan,
Hmm.
and when you are medevac, every night you don't go right to the hospital. They keep you in the Air Force, and this lovely, I think she was a major, came and washed my hair
Oh, no kidding.
in Japan, the nurse. Because I said something about being a major, and she says, "I'm a nurse."
Yeah. Yeah.
The Air Force just treated us like. Then I went to 106 General Hospital in Yokohama,
Oh, okay.
and they bussed us.
And how long were you there?
About 2 weeks.
And I'm assuming they're just working on you and just keep
Well, they're changing the bandages.
continuing to give
And-
you care.
If you were ambulatory, you went down to the burn ward, and people wheeled them to. But the thing I remember about, well, there was an earthquake. I remember that one night, and we could see Mount Fuji from the.
Oh yeah.
The thing I
I
remember.
actually remember seeing that on the flyover when we flew to Vietnam.
Yeah.
We looked out the window and there it was.
And it snowed, and I remember the night of the earthquake. There was a fellow in a bed next to me who could not get up.
Hmm.
Well, he sat straight up. I guess he thought it was incoming.
I guess the adrenaline must have helped him.
And when I told him the next day he sat straight up, he says, "No, I didn't." I said, "Yes, you did."
What was the date? I forgot to ask you. What was the date that you got wounded?
March 15th,
Yeah. Okay.
the Ides of March.
Okay. So then, did they say you're going home or sending?
Well,
you?
this Spec 4 came along with a clipboard, and he says, "You're going home." You know, and he says, "No, seriously, you go where?" I said, "At a
Yeah,
hospital." That's where I went.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think what the kind of the unwritten rule is they tried to get you as close to home as they could.
So I had called my mom and dad from Japan when I first got there. That was lovely because the telegram was all wrong.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. So I had to call again. Of course, that's it. You had to get an operator, and then you had to wait an hour. Or
Yep.
the first call was $36. The second one was 24.
Mm-hmm.
Bell Telephone paid for it.
Was that like a Mars,
No, it was regular.
just telephone?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
It
That's
must have been
nice.
a cable, I guess.
That's nice. So, and of course, you know, your mom, she's probably going nuts
Yeah.
and worry, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what moms do.
Yeah.
So, did they come and get you and take you home, or did you get taken home somehow when you got out of the hospital?
Well, I don't remember what day of the week it was. We landed at McGuire. They took us over. Now, I was able to sit, so I sat on the bus. Not too well, but
Yeah, yeah.
and I don't remember what day of the week it was, but on Saturday morning, they said we could give you a weekend pass. And I had no clothes,
Of course.
pajamas. And you think I'm thin then? I think I weighed 120 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So I couldn't eat because of this.
Sure.
So I had the knot. So I called home, and my mom and dad came and got me.
Oh, good.
I got to drive.
Oh, that's awesome. So you went home, and what was homecoming like?
In town, they were having a protest. Now, as I told you before, this was a Quaker town,
Mm-hmm.
and they were protesting the war. I could have walked through them with a uniform, and they wouldn't have bothered me.
Right.
The Quakers were against the war.
Yeah. Well, they were peace. I mean, that's their.
They
whole-
were truly pacifists,
Yes.
and they were very. A couple of them had called my mother to see if I was okay. So it was a different type of. It wasn't the California reception.
Of course. Yeah.
So at home, I went to church on Sunday, and shocked them that I was home.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of support.
How long after you got home did you say, "Well, I'm going to start looking for a job," or
I had a job.
so the teaching job?
Still open.
So was it in those days? They said when you come back, you'll have your job. Okay. So
Not only did you have your job, I had my pension paid for those 2 years, and I had my seniority
okay.
and my pay raises.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, good. That's very generous.
Yeah, that's
So-
the state. That was a state law.
So what was it like starting a brand new career in teaching?
Horrible. The only people that even recognized me, the superintendent called my mother when I got wounded, because it was in the paper.
Oh yeah.
His secretary sent me a get well card.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I was walking into a vacuum. And the superintendent introduced me as the newest, oldest teacher there. Because I was away
Yeah,
for
of
a couple
course,
years.
sure.
He didn't mention about. He just said I served in the military.
Yeah. During that time period, were you struggling with nightmares, or did you have anything like that going on with you?
I was. I just.
Yeah. So how long? Again, I forgot to ask you. How long were you in Vietnam from the time you got there till?
About possible time of maybe 6 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I remembered. But
Yeah.
it
Short
was-
enough time. That's why I didn't have a nickname, Tim.
Okay, that answers that question.
Yeah.
And when did you start thinking you wanted to have a family and date and so forth? Was it?
Well, I really didn't date that much. I did a little bit. When I first got home, I was kind of an introvert. I wanted to be left alone,
Sure.
which now I'm different. But
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine from college who lived in California came to visit me about 2 years after I was, and he sat down with me. He says, "I want to hear everything that happened to you," and that was the best therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I still tell him today. I said, "You were my first
Sure.
therapist," and I think that's between school and that's why I wasn't as damaged,
Yeah.
because I had some time to cure myself.
Sure. Well, when did you meet Darlene?
I met Darlene in Philadelphia.
This was after you were teaching.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was 33. I should put this on tape, but she's older than me.
Okay.
And I met her at church. She was doing a project. She went to Philadelphia College of the Bible.
Okay.
So she had some social work to do. And she was working in the Sunday school with my aunt.
Hmm.
And she always thought it was nice I was visiting my aunt. So this fellow I almost jacked up. We became friends later on. I said, I met this girl at church that I really like. And he says, why did you ask her out? And I said, I don't want to. He goes, why? I said, if I go out with her, I'm going to marry her. So I decided I was going to ask her out. And I saw her in Sunday school. And I said, after church, I want to see you. She handed me an envelope. It was an invitation to a formal at the Bible college.
I'll be. So she had already made up her mind she was going to invite you to the. Isn't that something?
6 months later, we're engaged.
Wonderful. And then you got married. How long after?
We had a year engagement.
Okay, yeah.
So we
Okay.
got married in June.
And any kids?
We have one boy.
Okay.
He's adopted.
Okay.
I was 39 when we adopted him. He's Korean.
Mm-hmm.
He's 6'1". He lives in New Orleans, and his precious girlfriend, who we love dearly, was born in Saigon.
No kidding.
Her name is Vanessa Vu, V-U.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
her dad was a boat. One of the boat. he
A boat person?
Yeah,
I guess for a lack of a.
yeah.
Yeah.
Does not say boo about. And strange thing is, we've never met the parents. I don't know why they haven't.
Are they here in the States?
Yeah, they're in Louisiana. They're in New
Oh wow,
Orleans.
that's unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her mother is somewhat incapacitated. She had a stroke and doesn't speak well, and I think she's embarrassed.
Mm-hmm. So when you came home, did you keep in touch with any of the guys from the platoon?
The only person I lost touch with, there was a fellow, you're going to laugh at this, that was an AIT with me. He went to Vietnam. You know, I went to Fort Knox. When I was in the hospital, my room was outside the phone, so I had to answer the phone. And I went in this ward, and somebody called me by my first name. It was the fellow I was in AIT with.
I'll be darned.
Because we were all from Jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
And you ready for his name? You're going to laugh at this. Tony Perota. That's
Not
why
not related to our Tony Peroni.
I think he's dead now, but
Mhm.
we palled around together, and we ran into one of our instant NCO guys who was on his way to Vietnam.
I'll be darned.
You know what we told him?
Uh-uh.
If you go AWOL, if you go to Canada, we will forgive you.
You know,
Because he was shocked to see us.
and you know, it's funny you mention that because during the time when I got my draft letter, that was when it really started, where the draft burning and the
Yeah.
card burning, and guys were taking off for Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just they were just leaving, and I remember thinking to myself, you know, I had no desire to go to Canada, and I actually came to grips to the fact that I think this is a patriotic thing to do, and I'll go and do my duty and put in my time, and then I'm going to come home. Now, see, that thinking got me started, but it didn't fill in the blanks about where I was going or what I was going to do or what I was going to be exposed to. Now, had I have really known what I was getting into, I might not have been so sure of myself, so to speak. So, what was it like when you got found and you came to the first reunion?
Well, when I left teaching, I was working I turned in full time as a shuttle driver at the Philadelphia airport, so I was shuttling airline crews. I go into the Holiday Inn in Center Historic City, and I liked leaving a crew there because you could use the men's room and
Sure.
grab something to eat or something without the cops hassling you. And I walk in, there's this big 25th Division Electric Strawberry. That was where they were having their convention.
Oh my.
The division
That
reunion.
brought it all back in a quick hurry.
So I talked to them, and they go, I said, I was with a group called the Wolfhounds. I remembered that. Wow. And they're going, wow. And I go, well, I wasn't with them very long. I said, I'm really not part of them. And I got yelled at. And I remembered the company. I actually remembered the platoon.
Mm-hmm.
And then I erased it. And I started thinking about Crabtree. And I can't think of his name. That has the website with all the names of the. So I started looking on that. Crabtree's name was on there. So was Lemire's, but they had no contact.
Mm-hmm.
So I started emailing people. And this lieutenant, Wolfhound lieutenant, emailed me back and he says, there's a website that might interest you. It's by Big John.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know him? I go. So on your website was Leroy's phone number. I called him. He says, I don't remember you. 3 hours later, we were still on the phone.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, yeah.
It came back. He says, oh, the old guy.
Yeah.
He says, I always wondered what happened to you.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is Leroy is today just like then. And
Yeah.
he said, well, nobody will know me. Nobody will remember who I mean, he believes that somehow or another he's just gone off in the dust and nobody will. And I keep telling him, I name you guys. I go down the list. But and we interviewed him this year.
Yeah, I've seen it.
When we were in California.
That's one person. I remember him, Burrow. We came up with Burrow's name. Alejandro. It's just like, when I look at his picture, it's like, I have a flashback because he's sitting there in the bunker. It's just like, because he meant so much to me. Because he was the only one that really talked to me.
Sure.
And we shared a lot. And he was funny.
Yeah.
And he didn't speak much English, but.
Yeah, his English was really broken.
Yeah. And Crabtree, and then I remember Lemire, of course. And then after various reunions, John Cook and I sat down one day, and it clicked. He was the other gunner.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, say something like, we're going to stop at the Howard Johnsons. And he did. I go, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you saying it. I said, you were funny. I used to laugh at you. He made going out sometimes kind of bearable.
Sure.
Between Lemire used to say, send me to LBJ, I don't care. That was Lemire's big.
Yeah. Now, what is your definition of a hero?
Oh, dear. Well, you know what they used to tell us in the Army. There's only one type of hero. That's a dead hero. I don't know, because I don't consider any of us heroes. We were doing what we had to do.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever known a hero that you thought was a hero, either in the Army or out of the Army?
I know people that are heroic.
Okay.
I consider people like you, like Big Joe and you guys, heroic.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, when we were kids, we used to say my hero. But
Yeah, oh yeah, okay. And then what does the American flag mean to you?
It means a lot. It means our country. And I want to tell you, all the stuff that's going on today and all, it's still better than any other place.
Absolutely.
And I fly the flag on Flag Day. I have a light on it. And all.
Mm-hmm.
So the flag is a symbol of 50 states. Of course, there were 48 when I was a kid.
Sure.
It's a way of, it's our country. And we should remember that, all of us, no matter what our politics, no matter what our
Yeah.
race, immigrants or what, but there's no American race.
Yeah. Does it irritate you when you see people disgracing or
Yeah.
denigrating the flag?
Yeah,
And,
it does. Now, when I taught, I had a little run-in with a parent. Well, not really, but there was, when I taught music. I used to teach about the Star Spangled Banner historically. You
and
know,
plus,
how
it's a neat piece to play.
yeah.
I
Well,
guess
well,
it
it's
sounds
impossible to sing, but about I had a film strip about, and I gave a little quiz about it. Now, I didn't grade it; it was either pass or fail. And there were twins who were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Mhm.
One of the twins took the exam, the other one didn't. So I gave him a failure on it. And the mother, of course, came in and complained. And I explained to her, this is not standing up and saluting the flag. This is part of our history.
right.
And it's part of our music history. How the flag came about and about Fort Sumter. And I said, I expect them to take it. And she agreed with me. We're all fine. Then she said to me, Jehovah's Witness, my faith, my religion we don't offend people. And I said to her, first time in my life I ever said something like that, I said, I am offended because I'm a Vietnam veteran. And my principal, I thought, was going to have a heart attack. But I clarified, but you have the right to.
Of course.
And I said, you don't, at that time I didn't say to her, they didn't disrespect. They stood for the Star Spangled Banner. They did not salute the flag, but they stood.
Sure.
They didn't disrespect
Yeah.
it, but they didn't. And I said, I understand where you're coming from, but it is somewhat offensive.
Yeah.
And I said, Christianity offends people. Religion offends other people. So
Sure.
I said, well, I just didn't want you to think that, Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, we weren't picking you out. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Now, later in life, of course, you had the opportunity, you've gotten involved in veterans issues and activities and so forth, and you go and speak to students. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my last experience last week, or the week before, I don't know when you retired, we spoke at an inner city school in Lancaster. Very old school, built in the 30s. Beautiful building. And I always heard, about this school, it was horrible, and da-da-da. And a lot of guys wouldn't go there to talk. Well, being a Philly boy, I'll go. Daytime.
Oh, yeah.
So I went and parked at the visitors lot, and there was a woman there who was going in. She asked me what I was doing there, and I told her. She said, oh, I'll let you in. She was Hispanic.
Mhm.
She's a substitute teacher. She says, oh, she went on about veterans. She took me to the office, and they took me to this library. It was big. And I'm going to tell you something. I never heard questions. These were ninth graders. We've been doing this for 6 years. We had questions that were far above some of the elite schools that we.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
We go to like 14 schools, 15 schools, and the questions they couldn't ask us enough questions. The periods were too short.
Mhm.
Then we have a little session afterwards. We have archives that were donated to us. They have old grenades, all types of stuff in there. They're all in case.
Mm-hmm.
And they could come up and talk to you. And I met a lovely little girl whose grandfather was Vietnam.
I was just going to say, a lot of these kids, their grandfather are Vietnam vets.
Yeah. No, we have a big Vietnamese community.
Oh, I see.
So her grandfather was Vietnamese. And she talked about being a Buddhist and the pacifism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the kids will ask me about the Arvins and their unwillingness to fight. And I always answer them. I said, if they were victims, because if they sided with us, their villages got burned. I said, they were drafted by the NVA. And I said, this is things that are left out of the history books.
Yeah. And in reality, they had to look at the long game.
Yeah.
they knew that America wasn't going to be there forever,
Correct.
but they did know that the NVA or that group was going to be there forever.
So she talked about her Buddha. She was a Buddhist. She was born in Los Angeles. And some of the kids, there was a girl came up, her grandfather was a Vietnam vet. She's being treated at the VA.
Hmm.
Agent Orange.
Mhm. Absolutely.
She came up and talked to us. And she
Wow.
says, you know what her question was? Now, she didn't talk to me. She talked to one of the other guys. What's the future look like to me? And the fellow talked to her and says, you know, your future's probably pretty good because you caught this early and you have a smart grandfather
Hmm.
who recognized the symptoms.
Great.
We saved a man. The teacher came up to us, talked about his dad. And I said to him, your dad's got Agent Orange. You better get him to a hospital real quick or he's going to die. And I said, I don't care what he says. Physically take him.
Sure.
A
Absolutely.
couple years later, he says, well, you know, you and the other guy saved my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He has cancer.
Yeah.
So the side effect of this is, plus what we do for the kids.
Sure. Now, I want you to look into the camera, and I want to ask you to give your best advice to not only this generation, but the next generation to come and the next generation after them. What would you, if you could be there in those generations, what advice would you give them?
Same advice that we give our students that we talk to, that you should look from us how damaged we are. And not just us, the Gulf War vets and the burn pits, the damage that war does. And it doesn't end. It continues on for generations and generations. It's a cost to the taxpayer. That you young people are voters. And when you consider a candidate, you should consider what the cost of war is.
Mm. Good. Bruce, is there anything in our interview that I have not brought up or that is really important to you that you want to make sure is in your interview? Have I covered it well? Or
You've done an excellent job. I don't think so.
Okay,
What I
no,
want
that's
to add
great.
was, when I met you in Vietnam, I didn't hate you. I didn't like you either.
Mhm.
And that's probably a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like you now. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
you've done wonders, but
Sure.
I probably over time would have. It's the fact that I didn't know you.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And after what you guys went through in Diamond One, I understand that. You know how lucky I am? I'm between the two diamonds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'd have been going to Diamond 2, slicker than a whistle.
Yeah.
April.
And I know we toasted them. I'd like to thank the fellow who launched those RPGs. Got me off the field. Got me back to the States. So far, I haven't had any Agent Orange
Yeah. Good.
symptoms.
And it didn't kill you.
No.
You're here to.
That's why you call me what? What do you call me? Bruce what?
Almighty.
Yeah.
Bruce, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today. And what you've done for the group is that our unit is, if you look at the whole unit, 68, 69, 70, it's like a big puzzle. And each one of us is a puzzle piece, and you have just added another puzzle to that to complete that
The
picture.
Wolfhounds mean so much to me. Ron King told me if I didn't go to the VA, he was going to come to Pennsylvania and physically escort me
Sure.
to the VA. So, and you told me when you came to my home,
Yeah, do you remember when I came?
Yeah.
Were you surprised?
I figured it out because Laura let kind of the
Oh, yeah,
cat
yeah.
out of the bag. And I figured, well, he's going to Pittsburgh. He's in Philadelphia area. He's got to come. I had figured it out. Yeah. And you started me off with the idea that I had maybe some PTSD.
Sure.
So your greatest avenue of support, and the guys, they mean a lot to me.
Of course. You
And
bet.
I look up to you in some ways. And I'm glad I can go to DC. I can do things, continue to serve
Oh, absolutely.
as a Wolfhound.
And it's good for you too.
Yeah.
It's good for everybody that you're serving, but it's good for you.
Yeah. And I talk about you. I talk
Sure.
about you. I talk about. They asked us about nicknames, the kids once, and I go, well, some of the names I can't repeat,
Sure.
like Marquez
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and George Cush.
Sure.
And I said, well, you know, we had Big John, Big Joe, Smokes.
Well, Bruce, thank you again, my
Thank
friend.
you.